right, today I want to talk about navigating a family business and specifically working with other members of your family and trying to build an organization that works but also includes family members. So we've all heard horror stories, or maybe we've lived and experienced horror stories of working in a family business, and maybe that's burned us or worried us about doing that. And we've certainly experienced some of those in our own company. And without going into too many details, early on in our business, my grandmother owned the company. My granddad had actually passed away, and my grandmother owned the company. My parents had some ownership, and then my grandmother had another child that was not in the business, and that relationship that my mom had with her mother became strained over time because of things with the business. And usually it's financial things, about what's being done with the money, and it strained the relationship. And fortunately, we were able to work through a lot of that, and my grandmother graciously ended up selling the business over to my parents, and we were able to sort through that. But there were some years and some times where that was tense and awkward and uncomfortable, and you're asking yourself questions like, can we continue doing this for the next 10 or 15 years? And I have another friend in the industry who ended up purchasing his company from his dad, but there was a strained relationship there for a while. Dad had founded and started the business and was very much in control and over the business and didn't want to let go of a lot of that control, and would make financial decisions, and that would put a strain on the relationship or the company, and those things just they challenge family relationships and make it to where it's hard to be family outside of work. And it also adds this layer of challenge and even a risk to the company itself. And so I think we need to ask ourselves the question, can we do family business, and can we do it well? And what does it take to do it well? How can we navigate that well? Okay, so if you find yourself in a family business, and by that I mean a business that is not just you involved, but there are other family members involved in the company. So I would argue that when that's the case, there are really two overarching goals that we're trying to achieve through this dynamic that we have. So number one, and probably most importantly, is that we maintain solid relationships with our family, both inside and outside the office. So as we like to say around here, we want to be able to eat Sunday dinner together or eat Thanksgiving dinner together, and there not be any strain or awkwardness there. So we don't want what happens in the company to create tension in the relationships outside the company. So that's goal number one. And for us, that has to always be the case. So we have to be willing to walk away or give up a lot of money if necessary in order to preserve those relationships. Now, point number two is that our second goal is that we preserve and protect the organization. Lots of people count on us, and employees count on us, customers count on us. And so whatever is going on with the family, that's one component of it, but we need to make sure we're taking care of and preserving and protecting the company. So I want to give you a few tips or a few things that you can do in your organization, some mindsets that you can adopt that I think will help you be able to achieve both of these goals of maintaining healthy family relationships, both in and outside the business, and protecting and preserving the company for the long haul. All right, tip number one to be able to achieve these goals is that there can be zero room for greed or selfishness among the family members, and specifically even among the owners in the organization. So those internal qualities are a cancer to relationships and will be a cancer to the organization. So when you're focused on what I can get and how much you can get for yourself, and there's a greediness of your heart involved, it's inevitable that will end poorly for the relationships and potentially poorly for the organization as a whole. So you've got to fight those temptations for greed and selfishness like crazy. You've got to fight those like crazy. They just can't be a part of the way you think, the way you feel, the way you act. It shouldn't be that way in general, but especially if there are other family members involved. So this leads to tip number two, which is that we need to have a heart or a posture of generosity and selflessness. So this is something my parents have modeled actually really well for me, is that their posture towards me has always been one of generosity and putting my interests above theirs, which in turn motivates me and encourages me to want to do the same for them. And so there's no amount of money or position or power or whatever that we're not always willing to hold with an open hand. And so I think that's important for us, is to not be greedy and also to have a heart of generosity. So just imagine living your life palms up, as it were, that you're open-handed about your stuff, the material stuff, the money, the business, for the sake of preserving the relationships and for the good of the organization. All right, number 3 is that you need a clear line of authority or a chain of authority in your organization. So you can be on equal footing relationally in the family, but within an organization, there has to be structure. There has to be authority and a chain of authority, so we understand how decisions are made and know who can call the shots in a particular situation or who has veto power or whatever. And that needs to be clearly understood and adhered to, and we hold each other accountable to that. And so when things get messy and there is no clear line of authority, then it makes room for the temptation for people to start jockeying for power and authority. And so that needs to be laid out early on, the expectations set and are clear. And I think it helps people know their role within the organization and to where they're not trying to overstep that or maybe getting out of bounds. So clear line of authority, clear chain of organizational authority, I think, is critical. Okay, number 4 is no nepotism. So as it pertains to siblings, so let's say that a parent has maybe a handful of siblings or kids that want to be involved in the business, or maybe there's a cousin or an aunt or an uncle. We need to make sure that our goal is not equality of outcome, but equality of opportunity. So our goal is not to make sure everyone makes the same living or has the same prestige or role in the company. Our job or our goal, and I'm saying this even as a parent, is to provide opportunities. So maybe our kids or family members would have opportunities that maybe somebody else doesn't get because they're a part of the family. And I think that's okay on a lot of levels. But we also don't want to give handouts. So if someone can't handle an opportunity or they're not fit for a role, we should not put them in that role just because they're family. And we should also not try to guarantee crazy amounts of pay or certain movement within the company just because they're family. So we want to provide opportunities for them and be able to maybe give them opportunities they wouldn't get otherwise. But also some of that opportunity needs to be combined with achievement on their end and hard work on their end. So avoid nepotism and favoritism, but I think it's okay to provide the grace of opportunities maybe that they wouldn't have. So provide those opportunities, worry less about equality of outcome. All right, tip number 5 to maintain peace and harmony in a family business is to have key leaders that are non-family members. So this is something, it's harder early on in the company when key leadership is small. Sometimes it's just the owner and one other person. But as our company has grown, we have 3 different individuals that are at the very top of the organization that are making lots of critical decisions. So that offers a few things for us. Number 1, I'm able to unload a little bit of the responsibility, or actually a lot of the responsibility, to those individuals to make decisions for the company. That can be really helpful. They can also balance me or owner desires and wants. So their objective often is always the company and putting the company first. And so it provides a helpful outside voice in conversations as it relates to strategy or what other big decisions. And then also, this is probably the most important one for me, is it provides for me a level of accountability. So those first 2 points that I mentioned about selflessness and not being greedy and having a posture of generosity, it's easy to lose sight of those when no one's holding you accountable. But when you have a leadership team that involves people from outside the family, it provides a level of accountability for the owners, but I think it's a healthy accountability that we all need, and it's for the good of the company. All right, number 6, the last point is that we should crown the company. So this is a phrase I get from the book called The Breakthrough Company, which is a great read, that they argue in that book that one trait or quality of companies that made it from the small startup stage into a thriving, flourishing business is that they put the company first above the interests of the owner. So when decisions are made, they're made for the good of the company, the good of the organization as a whole, and not made solely for the good of the owner or particular people that have interest in the organization. So this is a helpful filter, I think, to use in making decisions, that you would always ask, is this good for the company? Does this put the company first? Because in putting the company first, what you're doing is putting your long-term financial well-being first. You're putting first all the people that work at the organization, and you're putting first your customers. So just from a moral perspective, I think crowning the company, putting the company first, generates or helps put guardrails on our decisions, I think, that are helpful for us and in the long term benefit everybody. So I hope these 6 points are helpful. I think if you keep them in mind, try to implement them, let them be a grid through which you make decisions, I think it's going to help you navigate family business better if you're in it or thinking about allowing family members to join the company. And I think it will help you achieve the goal of having a flourishing, successful company and also really healthy family relationships.